Am I 18 female being overdramatic about my dad's 39 male drunk interaction with me? First, the following text was written in my Notes app quickly and with horrible formatting. I only wrote it down because it's so out of character for him I'd think it were a dream anyways. He was drunk enough that all he was doing was giggling and laughing. I laughed along with him because it was funny. He wasn't very aware of anything, even jokingly accusing me of stealing his money that was right in front of him. After a bit of that, he opened my stepmom's door and looked in. I thought it was to check if she was asleep because he had been talking and laughing rather loud, and stepped into the room for a moment. Then, because it seemed kind of like he was done talking, I went back into my room. Not a minute later he knocked at my door and I thought it was to say good night, so I stepped back into the hall to hug him, but he took my arms and led me into the kitchen. He then told me I was beautiful, and held my face with his hands, constantly brushing the hair from it. I tilted my head back because my face was too close to his and played it off like being insecure ab him looking at the pores on my nose. He turned us both around and hugged me, so I hugged back. He told me again how beautiful I was and kissed me on the lips, while his were kind of open. I kept mine still. He pulled away and said something like, "This is about to be a different kind of situation." He kept saying that. Wouldn't let me pull away too far. Kept my face in his hands, and clearly said, "I think you should go home." We were in our home? I repeated it and he confirmed that I should. IDK what that meant. I was so uncomfortable. Way more touchy than normal. Hands on my waist, under my arms. He said again that it was gonna be a different type of situation. After another hug I pulled away, said I needed to work. He got a little more normal after a couple seconds, saying, "Yeah, that's what we do." I went back to my room and a few minutes later he knocked. When I answered he asked, "Is this the new normal?" I went, "Is what the new normal?" And he took a long while before going, "Do you do extra things for everyone?" And I was confused, so I asked, "What do you mean? Like going out of my way to be nice, or school?" And he said he'd leave it up for me to decide, then left. Then came back a few minutes later to ask what my answer was. I told him I was still confused, and that his question was vague, and he eventually said to forget about it and went, "Sorry if I'm being weird right now." Then changed the topic to talk about a rug. I felt very unsafe during this whole interaction, and I just want other people's input on whether or not this was weird. It's very out of character for him, and he was very drunk, but acted relatively normal afterwards. Please help. I don't want to make a big deal out of something that isn't. That's disturbing, if you ask me. I've been in law enforcement for a while now, and did a 4-year stint in special victims. Your story sounds uncomfortably close to other stories I've heard over the years, except he stopped before anything too awful happened. Your dad should not have acted that way. Is your mom in the picture? Can you talk to her or your stepmom about it? I'm concerned because people's inhibitions are lower when they're drunk, and this might be something that's been under the surface for a while. Yeah, that really fucking weird. He was wanting to know if you wanted to be together sexually but kept his question vague so that he could backtrack and say that's not what he meant if you called him out. Being drunk does not excuse this at all. You don't just develop an attraction to your daughter when you get drunk one time. It's been going on in his head for a while. You aren't overreacting in the slightest, and I think you should get the fuck out of there, and hopefully someone will give some solid advice on how to go about that safely. Please leave this house. You're not safe. Your dad was not blackout drunk. Everything he did was calculated. He checked to see if your stepmom was asleep, and he kept his questions vague to have some deniability. It must be heartbreaking to be in this situation, but he sees you as a sexual object as evidenced by how he touched you. Please get out of this house today. You are not safe. Do not try to discuss it with him. Just go. There's no good read on this situation. Whether he was too drunk, high, tripping, having a psychotic break or mini-stroke, he is not safe for you to be around. Tell an adult you trust. If you can't, tell a friend you trust who hopefully has a parent you can talk to. If I were you, and if you have a decent relationship with your mother, tell her and talk about the next steps. I agree with others to sleep elsewhere if possible for a while, and to possibly talk to your father when he's sober, but I'd wait to confront him until you speak to another adult first. He sounds very drunk, but this is not okay, and you should have a private conversation with him when he is sober about these events and how they made you feel. People aren't themselves when they are drunk, but they are still responsible and should definitely not make their own daughters feel this way. No, you are not being overdramatic at all. Your dad, under the guise of being drunk, tried to have sex with you. That is disgusting and wrong on every conceivable level. And at this point you would be justified in cutting him out of your life because he's a danger to your safety. What's to say that the next time he gets drunk that he'll take no for an answer? He is 110% wrong on all this, and so far it looks like you have handled the situation with a ton of maturity. But please let him in know how wrong he is and how unsafe he made you feel. Hopefully he'll be disgusted by his behavior, but somehow I doubt that's going to happen. If it's safe for you, do so. I would definitely talk to your stepmom about it. Or anyone else who you feel safe confiding in. A conversation needs to be had. He was clearly pushing boundaries, regardless of his intoxication. He's 100% responsible. You mentioned he often doesn't remember the things he says or does. Don't let that be the reason you don't speak up. His reaction while sober will be very telling. I'm sorry this happened. And I sincerely hope this ends well. Despite my username I am female, my dad was an alcoholic and he has never done anything even close to this. When I was a teenager or young adult and he was out of it, he would talk about things he normally wouldn't discuss when he was sober, his failed marriage with my mom, or he would confront me that I took her side when they separated. I'm sorry, Op. Your experience is very concerning. Please reach out to an older adult that you feel safe with. Oh no, I hate this for you. I'm on team, go stay with friends. You say you don't have any other adults you're close to, but I would definitely talk to your mom about this, even if she's a state away. If she and your dad are able to be in the same room and be civil, she needs to come visit and sit down and talk to him on your behalf with you there, and read him the riot act. There isn't really anything he can do to take this back, but his ass needs to get in rehab and pay for you to see a counselor. I imagine moving to live with your mom doesn't work with finishing high school and whatnot, but let her help you figure out how to move forward and move out of that house. So sorry you're dealing with this, but you will be okay. I don't have any advice, but I can offer perspective. I'm a dad of 17F and a recovered alcoholic, 5 years sober, and I have to say it's impossible to get drunk enough for this to make sense to the drinker just because of the alcohol. I have been all the way drunk, and this is something different. There's something already in him that comes out when the tide gets low. It could be he was at blackout drunk stage and thought you were someone else. I do not think you are making a big deal out of something that isn't. I think you may not be safe there, because he will not remember anything he did in a blackout stage, and it doesn't sound like his wife will protect you. I am very sorry this happened to you. He was high. If that drunk, he'd have fallen down. He may have been drinking, but he had popped some pills too. I'm worried for your safety, sweetie. I'm not an expert, but I am in my 50s and I have been around long enough to have some experience with people like that. It sounds to me like he was either blackout drunk or having a psychotic break. He may or may not have been aware of who you were, and he may not remember it at all, but regardless, it is very, very concerning. You should definitely share the interaction with an adult you feel safe with, your mother, with him when he is sober, or with someone else. His behavior was deeply disturbing and potentially dangerous. You should not be around anyone who gets like that, and no matter what he says, there is the potential for it to happen again and you are not safe around him. That's fucked up. I don't care if he was really drunk or not. Yeah, that's not even a little bit normal. This is not a safe situation. As a victim of parental sexual assault, I can tell you that if he's saying these things while drunk, he's thinking them sober. Social taboos and collective morality are all that's stopping him from assaulting you for real. Do not allow yourself to be alone with him, lock your door, etc. Eventually his thoughts and urges could well be too much for him to handle. If you need someone to talk to about what was obviously a very scary and stressful situation, my DMs are always open. This was very inappropriate and you need to communicate this to a trusted adult who would have your best interests at heart. I don't care for this. I think he was sober enough to know what he was doing and may have been eyeing you for a long time, and this time took advantage of a pie-eyed guy sick situation. Stay clear, dear. Daddy is naughty. Yeah, that's a creep. GTF away from him. I'm 38 and that behavior is strange. Personally, my dad is also a pretty bad drinker, but I don't think this is something that should go ignored. Alcohol lowers inhibitions and allows those more reckless parts of you out. If that's part of your dad's more reckless features, I'd try to keep my distance. Be careful, miss. I'm here for any assistance or support I can provide. Getting drunk every so often is pretty normal in Western society. You know what my dad does when he gets drunk? Asks to help make pancakes. Or use the microwave. A few years ago at Christmas he asked for help finding David Attenborough docos because I'm drunk and want to see some fishies, not the asshole at all. I would suggest writing a letter instead of approaching him directly though. When I was your age I had real trouble confronting authority figures and keeping my thoughts in order, and a letter was a much better way to go so I could say everything I wanted to. He needs to stop drinking and you need to get out until he does, and probably stay out. Your story sounded scary. I would have been terrified. I was molested by my mom's drunk boyfriend my entire childhood, and that's honestly extremely close to what happened to me almost every night. Your dad is not safe to be around. You are not being overdramatic. I've noticed that many times when people are drunk their true intentions come out. The filter of sobriety and common sense is lifted. If there's anybody you can talk to besides your stepmom, I would reach out and ask if you could stay there. That is not a healthy environment to be in, that's for sure. Good luck and stay strong during this. My dad groped me while incredibly drunk and I'm still not over it, and am upset at myself for underreacting. This is a big deal, it's disgusting behavior and needs to be addressed. You need to tell your mom. As a mother and a wife I would want to know immediately if my husband or boyfriend was making my children uncomfortable so I could file for divorce to protect my kids immediately. As a mother I would want to know every single detail so I know what's best to protect my children, and if she doesn't know, how is she going to make sure this never happens to you again? First, I'm glad you're safe and sorry that happened, but yes, 100% not okay. Seems like he may have been on drugs as well, because that's way too out there, and how he talked about the rug makes me feel that's more it. And he seemed to not know who you were either. But you gotta go, sweetheart, hate to say it. As a female who was sexually assaulted by her father, I can tell you this does not sound normal, is not okay, and I do not have any advice about how to go about it. But definitely, be safe and find someone you can trust and run to if you ever need to get to safety. I'm really sorry you had to go through that, take a lot of care. Edit, spelling. You did not overreact. That whole situation was wildly inappropriate. And you need to get the hell out of there. You're not safe. From what you wrote, it appears at the time he did not know who you were. That does not make it right. He probably won't remember any of it. Stay away from him when he is drunk. Lock yourself in your room and do not answer him. If you have contact with him when he is drunk, don't continue communicating, just leave and don't respond to him. Drunk people cannot rationalize. Don't attempt to communicate with him in that state. Always listen to your gut. Your gut told you that was an uncomfortable situation and something was off, and you can clearly see which undertones he was using. I am terribly sorry you're dealing with this. I've been in a similar situation with my stepdad and I know how hard it is to actually bring it up to anyone. I suggest talking to a school counselor. They have the means to help and legally can't just sit there and do nothing when a situation of abuse pops up. Good luck to you, and if you ever need to talk I am always available. Get somewhere safe, heart. You're a victim, that's it. This is completely normal behavior from your dad. Relax. It sounds like he was in a blackout, which isn't the same as just being really drunk. Does he even remember his behavior? Blackouts mean you don't create a memory of what happened during the blackout, and your mind isn't working correctly, thus the bizarre behavior. If he has never shown you any reason to be fearful, but then gets massively drunk like he never has before, and acts cray while in a blackout, he needs to know about how he acted. But if it was a blackout, he certainly won't be able to explain it. I'm not thinking he knew what he was doing. You need to explore this with someone professional to guide you. Someone who understands the effects of alcohol on the brain. Absolutely move out if you don't feel safe. A drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts. I know your dad seems like a straight honest guy when he's not drinking, but underneath it something else is going on. This is not normal behavior and he's testing waters even though he is drunk. You need to call your mother right away. If you felt uncomfortable and unsafe because you were unsafe, call a counselor, but you need to talk to somebody right now. I'm sorry this is happening and I understand how you don't want to think that this was something creepy by your dad, but it was, honey. I am so sorry, but the best thing for you to do is to get help and get out of there, because if something does happen there's no coming back from that. It will be very hard for you to get past something like that. This is seriously heartbreaking for you. Get the fuck out ASAP. Absolutely do not confront him about this situation. Sorry, just a factual question here. Your dad is 39? And you're 18? Okay, creepy and weird, but is there a chance he thought you were your mom? Telling you to go home, saying work, yeah, that's what we do. All sounds like a very totally out of character and not making sense. Not that he has an excuse, but all that is very weird. I'd get out of there, that's just a totally uncomfortable situation. That sounds like a precursor to molestation if you ask me. Get out before it's too late. A drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts. This story sounds disturbing and I think you need to try and remove yourself from the situation, especially when he is drinking. Your dad tried to rape you. Full stop. You aren't safe in that house anymore. Yeah, he needs serious help. With his drinking and his behavior. You do need a safe place to live, so if mom is an option I would head that way. Sounds like he was blackout drunk. You can be that hammered and still mostly be able to interact, but everything is all screwed up. You need to let him know that he was way too drunk and that he had scared you and been inappropriate at best. If he chooses alcohol as more important, then you need to get out of there, ASAP. Honestly, as an alcoholic, but 15 years sober, I can tell you that this situation has more red flags than a Chinese Communist Party parade. Good luck. Horrible. I'd never look at him or speak to him again. Anyone saying that's overreacting will never understand. If you want to, fine. Some of us should never be told we are overreacting, you don't fucking know. Is there any chance that your father had taken some kind of prescription medications? Particularly if he was taking Zolpidem, Ambien or a benzodiazepine, what happened may have occurred more of a sleepwalking behavior than anything intentional. At first I was thinking, maybe he was asleep and thought you were your mom? Then it got creepier and creepier. Sounds like he was so drunk he had no idea what he was doing. That doesn't make it right by any means, but I would talk to your mom about it. Tell your dad, when he's sober, that he made you feel uncomfortable. You'll set a boundary and voice your concerns about his drinking all in the same sentence. 2 birds, 1 stone. Fake. That is super disturbing. And from what his drunken conversation can be pieced together as, he's either fucking, or trying to fuck a coworker. And he confused you for her. So she's probably really young too. And yeah, you were right to feel unsafe around him. If he can get that belligerently drunk that he can't recognize his own daughter, you need to safeguard yourself in that house. This post doesn't much say about your relationship with his otherwise, so I don't know if a confrontation, a calm one, is possible for you, but if it isn't, I would have an exit plan in place for times when he gets drunk. I would either have a friend's place available for sleepover, or lock your room if you decide to stay in the house. Super creepy. Sorry you had to experience that.